I want to tell you what it feels like when the last piece of your husband hits the bottom of a swimming pool. It doesn't feel like anything, at first. That's the strange part. Your brain refuses to process it. You watch a small gold object arc through the summer sunlight, catch one bright flash off the crystal face, and disappear into the pale blue water, with a sound so small it seems impossible that it just happened. A tiny wet click, then silence, and then, in the same moment, you hear a woman's voice. My daughter-in-law's voice, warm and light and completely without concern, saying, "Oh, Ruth, honey, I'm so sorry." "It's fine, though. It was just some old junk anyway. I'll buy you a new one." Just some old junk. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not lean over the edge of the pool with a pool net and dredge for the watch, though every cell in my body was screaming at me to do exactly that. I stood very still. I held the plastic cup of iced tea she had handed me 30 seconds earlier. I felt the sun on my 71-year-old shoulders. I heard my grandchildren laughing somewhere behind me. I heard the distant sound of a boat on the lake. And I said, in the same soft voice I used to greet clients for 34 years at my art gallery on Newbury Street, "Yes, dear, that's very kind of you. Would you excuse me for a moment? I need to go inside." I walked into the house. I closed the door behind me. I stood in the cool dark of the kitchen for exactly 90 seconds. I counted them. I have always been a woman who counts things when I am about to do something important. Then I picked up the phone, and I called our insurance agent. 3 days later, my daughter-in-law Brittany was sitting across from an FBI forensic accountant, and by the end of that week, she had been arrested. Not for the watch, though the watch was part of it. She had been arrested for a fraud scheme going back 7 years, involving 3 families and 1 insurance company that had been very, very patient, waiting for the right moment. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the watch. My name is Ruth Kowalski. My husband was Henry. Henry and I met in 1972 at a Sotheby's auction in New York, where I was a 23-year-old assistant clerking for one of the American painting specialists, and Henry was a 30-year-old attorney trying to buy his first serious watch for himself. He didn't get the watch he came for. Someone outbid him at the last second. He was standing in the lobby afterward, looking irritated in a beautifully tailored suit, and I walked past him with a stack of catalogs, and he said, I quote, "I have never forgotten this." He said, "Excuse me, do you know anything about watches?" I said, "I know about paintings. Watches are next door." He said, "Would you like to have coffee anyway?" I did. We were married in 14 months. We had 3 children, Michael, David, and Sarah. I opened my own gallery on Newbury Street in Boston in 1981. Henry became a partner at his law firm. We built a life, a quiet, comfortable, ordinary, deeply happy life. Henry died 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 9 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. I would like to tell you that I have gotten better since then, but I would be lying. Some griefs you carry. Some griefs carry you. Henry's is the second kind. I still live in our brownstone in Beacon Hill. I sold the gallery 3 years before Henry got sick. I have a lake house in New Hampshire that Henry and I bought in 1988, and every May through September I open it, and my children and grandchildren come for weekends and holidays, and we swim and eat too much and remember that we love each other. That is the house where the watch went into the pool. I want to tell you about the watch itself now, because you need to understand what it was and what it meant before you understand what happened next. Henry's watch was a Patek Philippe reference 2499. It was made in 1958. It was, at the time of his death, one of only 281 ever produced. I want you to hear that number. 281. In the entire world, for the entire 70-year span of the model's existence. Henry did not buy it at that Sotheby's auction. He was not, at 30, wealthy enough to buy something like that. What he bought that day was a nice, ordinary Longines. He wore it for 8 years. The Patek Philippe came from his mentor. Henry's mentor was a man named Aaron Bergstein. Aaron was a senior partner at the firm, a Holocaust survivor, and one of the finest lawyers of his generation. Aaron took Henry under his wing when Henry was 27, and he did what mentors do. He made Henry better, harder, wiser, more human. He was the closest thing to a father Henry had after his own father died. Aaron got sick in 1980. He was 73. When he called Henry into his office one afternoon, he took the watch off his wrist and set it on the desk between them. He said, "Henry, this was my father's. It was on his wrist the day he was taken. He gave it to a Christian neighbor before they were transported. That neighbor returned it to me in 1946 when I was 17. It is the only thing I have that was his." He said, "I have no children, and you are the only person in my life who has ever treated me like his own father." He pushed the watch across the desk. He said, "Please, wear it every day, take care of it, and when it is time, give it to someone who will do the same." Henry cried. Henry, who did not cry at his own father's funeral, cried in Aaron Bergstein's office at 41 years old. He wore that watch every day for the next 41 years. He wore it in the ocean. He wore it to the delivery room for all three of our children. He wore it to Aaron's funeral in 1984, and to his mother's funeral in 1997, and to our daughter's wedding in 2006. He wore it to the last dinner we had together, 3 nights before he was too weak to eat. He took it off, finally, in the hospital. He put it on the bedside table. He said to me, "Ellie." Thriel, that was his name for me. "Ellie, this is yours now. I know Aaron said give it to someone who will care for it. But you are the person who cared for me. I want you to keep it. Wear it. Or don't. But keep it near you." I have kept it near me. Every day, every single day of the last 2 years, that watch has been on my dresser, or on the little velvet tray in my purse, or on the nightstand at the lake house. That is the object that went into my swimming pool on a Saturday afternoon in July, because my daughter-in-law thought it was junk. I want to be careful here. I do not want to make Brittany into a cartoon. Brittany is my son David's second wife. She is 34. She is beautiful in the specific way that women who work at it very hard can be. The hair, the teeth, the careful lighting she seeks out in every room. She met David 5 years ago at a charity gala, 3 months after his first marriage had ended. She was working at the time in what she called brand consulting, which as far as I could ever tell meant she took photographs of luxury handbags and posted them on Instagram. David is my middle child. He is 41. He is not, and I say this as his mother, an unusually strong-willed man. He is kind, he is well-meaning, and he has always been just slightly susceptible to whoever last spoke to him firmly. His first wife was a wonderful woman named Karen, who I still see for coffee twice a year. Their marriage did not end for any dramatic reason. It ended because David got quieter and quieter, and Karen got lonelier and lonelier, and they woke up one morning in the same bed feeling like strangers. Then, Brittany appeared. I want to say something honest here. I tried for 4 years to like Brittany. I did. I told myself she was young. I told myself she made David laugh. I told myself the ostentation, the constant photos, the labels turned outward, the way she always seemed to be performing a small movie about her own life, was just her generation. But there were signs, and I want to walk you through them. The first was at Thanksgiving. The first year she came to our house. She spent 40 minutes appraising my furniture with her eyes, not in an artistic way, an evaluation way. I know the difference. I did this professionally for 34 years. She was pricing my house. The second was at my 70th birthday, when she gave me a gift-wrapped box that turned out to be an empty picture frame. "Because you have so many beautiful photos, Ruth, and I noticed you don't display enough of them." What she meant was, "Your walls are underdressed." She was correcting me. The third, and this is the one that finally made Henry, who was still alive then, say to me one night in bed, "Ellie, watch her." Was at my grandson's confirmation. Brittany reached across the table and physically adjusted my necklace, just reached over and moved it, and said, "There, that's better." Like I was 6 years old. Henry said, "She wants what you have, Ellie, and she doesn't want to earn it." I said, "Oh, Henry, you're being unkind." He said, "I hope so." He was not being unkind. Memorial Day weekend this year was the first family gathering at the lake house since Henry died. Michael and his wife Jennifer came. Sarah and her husband Rob came with their 2 children. David and Brittany came with their daughter Maya, who is 17. Maya is David's daughter from his first marriage with Karen, and I want you to remember Maya, because she is essential to this story. 12 of us, 3 days, grilled things, the pool, the dock, the lake. A slight breeze all weekend that smelled like pine and gasoline from the outboard motors. I brought Henry's watch. I had been bringing it to the lake house every summer since he died. It sat on the little bedside table in the master bedroom, under a small crystal dish that had belonged to my mother. I noticed, on the first evening, that Brittany was in and out of my bedroom 4 separate times before dinner. I noticed because my bedroom is at the end of the hall, past 3 other bedrooms, and there is no reason to walk past your own bedroom to reach mine, except to reach mine. The 4th time, I followed her. I said, "Brittany, dear, is everything all right?" She jumped. Actually jumped. And then she smiled and said, "Oh, Ruth, I was just looking for the extra towels. I thought you kept them in your bathroom." I keep the extra towels in the hall linen closet, which she had walked past to get to my bedroom. I smiled. I said, "The linen closet, dear." Right here. She said, "Oh, silly me." That was the first time I paid close attention to her that weekend. The second time was on Saturday morning when I saw her courier through the kitchen window, from the porch, take a photograph of something on my dresser through my bedroom window. I could not see what she was photographing, but I could see her face. And her face was not the face of a woman taking a photograph for fun. It was the face of a woman making a record. Saturday afternoon was the pool party. We had invited a few neighbors from the surrounding lake houses, maybe 20 people, all told. I had put on a soft cotton dress. I was wearing Henry's watch on my left wrist because I had decided that morning, dollars for the first time, that maybe I would start wearing it. Just around the family. Just to feel him near me. I took it off around 2 p.m. My wrist had gotten hot in the sun, and the watch strap was leather, and I did not want to damage it. I set it on the little glass side table by the pool, beside my iced tea and my sunglasses. Brittany was, I would later learn, watching me set it down. 20 minutes later, she came over with a fresh iced tea. She said, "Ruth, honey, I brought you another one." She leaned across me, not around me, across me, to set the tea down. Her arms swept across the glass table. It looked like clumsiness. It looked like a woman being a little too free with her body in a small space. The watch went off the table. It bounced once on the concrete lip of the pool, and it went into the water. She said, "Oh, Ruth, I'm so sorry. It's fine, though. It was just some old junk anyway. I'll buy you a new one." I want you to hear that phrase again. It was just some old junk anyway. She did not say, "Oh no, let me get it." She did not say, "Oh God, we have to fish it out right now before the water damages it." She did not say, "Please tell me it wasn't important." She said it was junk, which meant she wanted to be certain, in the 15 seconds after it happened, that I would not try to fish it out. I understood that in the second she said it. I walked inside. I called our insurance agent, and I said, "Frank, I need to file a claim, and I need to move fast. I want to explain something before I tell you what happened next." The watch was insured. It was insured for $2.4 million. Shirao series REs and me, is in my picture, with him forfis foreign juries, and my thous letting form was sovereign, and I high being for, with that Weimar slave being called Winda for. I know that number, because I had it appraised 8 months ago, when I was updating our estate documents. The appraiser was Marvin Silverstein, a man I have known for 40 years, who ran the largest watch and jewelry auction house in New England before he retired. Marvin had looked at the watch, taken it apart, and said to me, "Ruth, this is one of the finest surviving examples I have seen. The provenance alone is worth 6 figures. The watch itself, at auction today, would be somewhere between 2.2 and 2.6. I would insure it for 2.4. I called my agent Frank the next day. We rewrote the policy. Frank had come to my house and personally photographed the watch on all sides, from all angles, and had entered it into the specific item schedule on the homeowner's policy. That policy had a very particular clause. It required immediate notification within 72 hours of any loss, damage, or theft. That is why I called Frank before I did anything else. Not because I was trying to be clever, because I was doing what the paperwork required. In the state of mind of a woman who had run a business for 34 years and knew that when something goes wrong, you make the call first. Frank picked up on the second ring. I said, Frank, Henry's watch is at the bottom of my swimming pool. My daughter-in-law knocked it in. She says it's an accident. There was a long pause. Frank said, Ruth, do you have security cameras at the lake house? I said, yes, around the perimeter, since the break-in 6 years ago. Frank said, do any of them cover the pool area? I said, one does, the one on the corner of the boathouse. I installed it because of the dock. Frank said, Ruth, don't touch anything. Don't say anything to anyone. I'm going to call our fraud unit and I'll have someone up there tomorrow morning. I said, Frank, why the fraud unit? He said, because a $2.4 million policy on a very specific vintage watch that gets destroyed in a pool by an in-law who happens to be visiting. Neen, that's not a scenario we file under accident and move on. That's a scenario we investigate. I said, Frank, may I say something? He said, yes. I said, I want you to know that I did not plan this. I want you to know that I loved that watch and I would give every dollar of that policy back to have Henry hand it to me again. Frank said, Ruth, I have known you for 22 years. I know. He said, give me until tomorrow morning. Maya came to my bedroom door at 11 p.m. that night. Maya, my 17-year-old granddaughter, David's daughter from his first marriage, who I had not spoken to alone all weekend, but who I had noticed watching me at dinner. She stood in the doorway. She said, Grandma, can I come in? I said, yes, sweetheart, always. She closed the door. She sat on the edge of my bed. She did not look at me for a long moment. Then she said, Grandma, I have to tell you something. I said, go ahead. She said, I saw her do it. I said, do what, sweetheart? She said, Brittany, I saw her push the watch off the table. It wasn't an accident. She looked around first. She checked to see who was watching. She thought no one was, but I was, from the upstairs window. I was in Dad's old room getting my swimsuit, and I looked out and I saw her lean over you and just sweep her arm across the table. I sat down beside her. I said, Maya, are you sure? She said, Grandma, I've been watching her for a year and a half. I said, what do you mean? Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Grandma, do you remember when Aunt Sarah's mother-in-law's ring went missing at Christmas 2 years ago? I said, yes. Ellen Coleman's engagement ring. Rob's mother. It disappeared during the Christmas dinner. Maya said, Brittany took it. I said, how do you know? Maya said, because I saw her hand it to a man at the restaurant on Newberry Street a week later. I was walking past with my friend Sophie. It was through the window. She was passing him a small velvet pouch. He gave her an envelope. I know it was Ellen's ring because I recognized the pouch. Ellen showed it to me at Christmas when she was telling me the story of how her husband proposed to her. Maya was crying now. Quietly, not sobbing, just leaking tears the way you do when you have been holding something for a long time. She said, I didn't tell anyone because I didn't know what to do. Dad wouldn't have believed me. He never believes anything bad about her. And I thought if I said something, she would make him get rid of me. I would lose Dad. I said, sweetheart. She said, but Grandma, today, when she pushed the watch in, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't be quiet anymore. I said, Maya, look at me. She looked at me. I said, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Do you understand me? Nothing. You were 17 years old carrying an adult secret. That was not your job. She said, I should have told you sooner. I said, you told me exactly when you could tell me. That is what heroes do. She said, Grandma, there's more. I said, tell me. She said, I saw her Google searches on the family laptop last month. I was looking for a school project I had saved, and her account was still logged in. She had searched, Grandma, she had searched for how much a Patek Philippe 24.99 is worth. And she had searched for whether water damages vintage watches. And she had searched NIN for whether insurance companies pay out if a watch is destroyed on a policyholder's property by a family member. I closed my eyes. I opened them. I said, Maya, do you still have access to that laptop? She said, I can log in. My account is still on it too. I said, sweetheart, in the morning, before anyone is awake, would you take screenshots of her search history and send them to my email? She said, yes. I said, then I want you to do one more thing. I want you to pack a bag, because tomorrow I am telling your father that you are staying with me for the summer, and I do not want him to have time to say no. Maya said, Grandma. I said, you are safe now, Maya. I promise you, you have been the bravest girl in this house for a very long time, and you are going to be safe. She fell into me. I held her. I did not cry until she had gone back to her room. At 6:47 a.m. the next morning, a woman named Karen Mitchell arrived at my lake house. She was the senior fraud investigator for our insurance company's national office, based in Hartford. She had driven up overnight. She sat in my kitchen. She drank coffee. She looked at Maya's screenshots. She looked at the security footage from the boathouse camera, which I pulled up on my iPad and which very clearly showed Brittany sweeping her arm across the table with a small pause, a check of the room, and then a swift, decisive motion. Karen Mitchell said one word. She said, well. Then she said, Mrs. Kowalski, I need to ask you a question. I said, yes. She said, have you ever had any prior interaction of any kind with a family named Coleman, or with a woman named Ellen Coleman? I said, Ellen Coleman is my daughter's mother-in-law. Her engagement ring went missing at Christmas 2 years ago. Karen Mitchell wrote something down. She said, and with a family named Fitzgerald in Newton? I said, I don't believe so. She said, Mrs. Kowalski, I want to tell you something, and I need you to hold it in confidence for a few days. I said, of course. She said, your daughter-in-law Brittany was previously married, before David. She was married for 2 years to a man named Adam Fitzgerald. During that marriage, she filed 3 separate claims for damaged or missing jewelry on the Fitzgerald family policy. All 3 items were owned by Adam's mother. 2 paid out. The 3rd we denied. That's when the divorce happened. She was flagged in our internal system as a suspicious repeat claimant. I said, then why? Karen Mitchell said, because we can only flag her. We couldn't prove intent, and when she remarried into your family, we didn't know. She said, until now. She looked at me. She said, Mrs. Kowalski, what you have here, all the security footage, the search history, the witness. All is the case we have been waiting 6 years to build. If you are willing to move forward, we can involve the FBI Economic Crimes Unit. Because if she has done this 3 times before, and to your family, and to Ellen Coleman's family, we are looking at a pattern of interstate insurance fraud that will end in federal charges. I said, Miss Mitchell. She said, yes. I said, I want you to bring the FBI. David came down for coffee at 8:15 a.m. He walked into the kitchen. He saw Karen Mitchell. He saw the printouts on the table. He saw the iPad, paused on a freeze frame of his wife's arm sweeping across a table. His face went completely, entirely white. He said, Mom, what is going on? I said, David, sit down, sweetheart. He sat. I walked him through it, every detail. Slowly, in the calm voice I had used with clients for 34 years when I was telling them their painting was a forgery. There is a way to deliver bad news. You do not soften it. You do not embellish it. You lay it out evenly in the order the person can absorb it. At the end, David put his head in his hands. He said, Mom, I knew something was wrong. I knew. I didn't want to know. I said, David, look at me. He looked at me. I said, you are 41 years old, and you are a good man who has spent the last 5 years being weak. Those are 2 different things, and you are going to spend the next 5 years being strong. Do you understand me? He said, yes. I said, I want you to know something. Maya knew. Maya has known for a long time, and Maya is the person who told me. He started to cry. I said, Maya is going to live with me now, for as long as she wants to. You are going to see her whenever you want to, but she is safe with me, and I am not asking, David, I am telling you. He said, yes, Mom. Yes, please. I said, now go upstairs. Wake Brittany. Tell her Karen Mitchell is here from the insurance company and would like to speak with her about the claim. He said okay. He went upstairs. Brittany came down in a white sundress and her makeup on. She had, I noticed, put on lipstick before she came down. She sat at the table and she smiled at Karen Mitchell, and she said hi. Yes, what a nightmare with the watch, right? Ruth is heartbroken. Karen Mitchell said, Mrs. Kowalski, before we go further, I want to remind you that anything you say to me today may be used in a subsequent criminal investigation. You have the right to have an attorney present. Do you understand? Brittany's smile did not move, but her eyes did. She said, I don't need an attorney. It was an accident. Karen Mitchell said, would you like to see the security footage? Brittany's smile finally moved. Just a little. The corners. She said, the security footage of what? I said the security footage of the pool, dear. From the corner of the boathouse, the one I installed after the break-in in 2019. Brittany turned to me. For 1 second, I saw the woman underneath the sundress and the lipstick and the 4 years of Instagram photos. I saw a hard, calculating, hungry woman who had walked into my family 5 years ago and made a plan. Then she recovered. She said, Ruth, I don't know what this is about, but this is really upsetting, and I'd like to go home now. Karen Mitchell said, Mrs. Kowalski. The doorbell rang. I said, that will be the FBI, dear. Brittany was charged with 3 counts of interstate insurance fraud, 1 count of grand larceny for Ellen Coleman's ring, and 1 count of criminal mischief for the watch. Her prior marriage was reopened, and Adam Fitzgerald's family cooperated fully with the investigation. The full pattern, when it was reconstructed, went back 7 years, involved 4 families, and totaled just over $1.8 million in fraudulent claims. She pled guilty in a plea deal and was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. David filed for divorce 2 weeks after her arrest. Maya lived with me for the rest of that summer. She started her senior year at Boston Latin the following September, and she lived at my house through her senior year and her 4 years at Wellesley College. She graduated in 2026 with a degree in economics and is now, at 22, working for the same insurance investigator, Karen Mitchell, in Hartford. She wants to be a fraud investigator. She is going to be a spectacular one. David has spent the last 3 years slowly becoming the man he could have been. He is not the same man he was. He is quieter now. Sadder. More watchful. He comes to dinner every Sunday. He is dating a lovely woman named Rebecca, who is a pediatrician and who I believe genuinely loves him. He has asked me 3 separate times whether he can ever earn back my full trust. I have said to him, David, you already have. You told the truth. You let go of her. You put your daughter first. There is no more debt. He does not fully believe me. He will, in time. Ellen Coleman got her ring back. It was in Brittany's safe deposit box in New Hampshire. She had not sold it. She was holding it for later. When Ellen got it back, she came to my house and she wept in my kitchen. And she said, Ruth, thank you. I said, Ellen, it wasn't me. It was Maya. Ellen has since become one of the great friends of my life. The Patek Philippe was recovered from the pool the next morning. The pool company drained it. The watch was, of course, destroyed. But the insurance settlement, $2.4 million, Singh was paid in full within 4 months. I did not keep the money. I set up a foundation in Aaron Bergstein's name, Henry's mentor, the man who had given him the watch in the first place. The foundation provides legal representation to families investigating elder financial abuse and estate fraud. It has represented 41 families in 3 years. Every single one of them has recovered assets. 16 of the cases have ended in criminal convictions. Aaron Bergstein was a Holocaust survivor who lost his entire family to men and women who thought other people's lives could be taken and their belongings kept. I like to think he would have approved. Here's what I want to say to you before I end this story. If someone in your life is looking at your possessions with the eyes of an appraiser and at you with the eyes of an obstacle, you are seeing that correctly. You are not paranoid. You are not being unkind. You are seeing what your eyes were built to see. If a child or a grandchild or a young person in your family comes to you with a small, quiet, frightened story about something they have noticed, sit down. Close the door. Listen. Do not tell them they are imagining it. Do not tell them not to make trouble, because that young person has been carrying something alone for a long time, and the courage it took to come to you was greater than you can imagine. If you have possessions that mean something to you, an object, a letter, a photograph, that carry the memory of someone you loved, they are not junk. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter how casually they dismiss them, the people who call your treasures junk are almost always the people who could not create anything of their own value, and who are threatened by yours. Henry's watch was made in 1958. It was worn by a man who survived the worst century in human history, who returned to a life he had every right to abandon, and who taught my husband how to be a better man. It was worn by my husband, every day, for 41 years, through the birth of 3 children and the death of both his parents, and the entire arc of a marriage I would live twice, if I could. It was worth every penny of the $2.4 million it was appraised for, and it was, at the same time, priceless. Both things can be true, my darling. That is what people like Brittany can never understand. They cannot imagine that something can have a dollar value and at the same time be beyond dollars. To them, everything is either a price tag or a piece of junk. That is what will always be their limit, and that is what will always be your protection. You are not confused, my darling. You are the keeper of what matters, and whoever is trying to convince you otherwise, and they are the junk.